Also, but there will be people watching over online and things as well, so it's good for them to know what that is. We'll do that shortly. And then we shall begin.
Welcome to Theocafe. Before we begin, we'd like to set a few ground rules and guidelines to make things run as smoothly as possible. Number 1. Disagreement does not mean disrespect. Diversity is a good thing, which means we will all have different opinions to share. Let's hear each other out respectfully. Number 2. Deconstruct ideas, not the person. If you disagree with someone, by all means challenge a statement constructively. Another way to say this is play the ball, not the player. Number 3. Be willing to have your ideas challenged and be ready to back yourself with evidence. Just my opinion is not the end of the conversation. And finally, your insight is valuable to us and we all want to hear it, including our online participants. So please use a microphone when you share your questions or comments. We'll get it to you as quick as we can. Now that we've established our ground rules and our guidelines, please enjoy Theocafe.
Lovely. So you've all heard our in-flight recording. Wonderful. So welcome everybody to Theocafe this week. And the topic this week, the topic this month is... I forget what I called it. Can we go to the next slide? Because it will remind me. Lovely. Wonderful. Good. Yes, there we go. Eggs, fish, chocolate. The history of common Christian symbols. That's a cursed AI picture that I put up there. So there's eggs, there's fish, there's chocolates, there's a woman that doesn't exist. So very good. Alrighty, so let's get into the topic. Next slide. Oh, that's Harry Styles. He's 3 times Grammy Award-winning artist. If you've never heard of Harry Styles, please check him out. Fantastic. Wonderful. Next slide. Excellent. A general statement about symbols. Okay, so when I first put this together, there were people coming who had specifically caused me to run this topic. So, on Easter, I got complaints. Here's an inside thing now. The person's not here, they won't watch it online. So on Easter I got complaints because we were giving out chocolate eggs at the end of the service. That's horrendous. You should not do that. I don't need to have that pushed in my face. I'm one of those people that doesn't like Easter eggs and things during Easter, and I felt excluded because you were offering Easter eggs, that sort of stuff. So bless that person. It was very helpful. It was very challenging. It helped me challenge my preconceived notions. And then I thought, okay, so why would that be? Let's do some education stuff on what our symbols mean, where they come from. So a general statement before we begin, which you probably don't need because, well, maybe you do. Maybe some people are really upset about symbols and stuff, but I can't see them here. So if a symbol is natural, if it's something like wood, or a leaf, or some kind of east wind that blows in, the chances are many, many different cultures for thousands and thousands of years have used that thing as a symbol. The chance is it has been used by many different religious traditions as a symbol. And it's been adopted and adapted over time to mean different things. And that's the same with every religious symbol. and just about everything that we use as symbols. So I want to, from the very start, challenge, and you, again, I'm not telling you you have to think like this, but I want to challenge this whole idea of getting to the real meaning, the original meaning of the symbol, right? And that actually they use this symbol as a Christian thing or a Muslim thing or a Jewish thing or a Jainist thing or a Taoist thing or whatever, but actually it means this because it was earlier than that, right? So symbols have been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years by many different cultures in many different ways, and if it's a natural thing that's part of the living world, then it will have been used religiously. Just because it's been used by other traditions, does that make it evil? It's not for me to judge today. Alrighty, so let's begin. We're puzzled. How did this happen? How did we go from Jesus rising from the dead to a really frazzled looking rabbit holding a bag full of eggs? Right? Well, let's go down the rabbit hole, shall we? Early Christianity. Eggs have long been a symbol of fertility and rebirth, representing new life emerging from a shell. This symbolism is seen in various cultures, including ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, very similar area, and Persia, where decorated eggs were used in springtime festivities. Yes, eggs were used as religious symbols in other religious traditions well before Christianity, because they're eggs. They're natural things. As soon as people discover something, they attribute meaning to it. Right? So yes, that's true. Eggs are not just a Christian symbol. All right, next one. Oh, sorry, I'm not reading well. So the tradition of Easter eggs in Christianity is believed to have started among early Christians in Mesopotamia, again, very, very early, who stained eggs in red. Guess why? The same reason we wear red at certain seasons of the Christian year, in memory of the blood of Christ shed at his crucifixion. Right? Does that make sense? This custom spread throughout Orthodox churches in the East to Eastern Europe and Siberia, and later to Europe through the Catholic and Protestant churches. So this was at least alive in the Orthodox churches, the Eastern Orthodox churches, early in the piece. Must have been post the Nicene Council, where we all got upset with each other and St. Nicholas punched Arius and the straw broke the camel's back, and all of a sudden there's Catholic and Orthodox, right? So it must have been after the late 300s, but it was being used very early in at least the Eastern Orthodox churches as a symbol of Easter. Eggs painted in red to represent the blood of Christ. All right, next one. In medieval Europe, in their festivals, eggs were prohibited during Lent. Do not eat eggs, you sinners and heathens, making them special treat at Easter, right? So you didn't eat eggs during Lent. It was part of the fat of the earth, right? So you fasted from eggs. Then when you got to Easter, oh my gosh, we can eat eggs again. This is beautiful, wonderful. It led to the tradition of decorating eggs, to giving them as gifts. You can imagine you fast over Easter, and the fast is not like we do today. It's not giving up social media. It's not giving up a little bit of chocolate. It's not saying, I'm not going to have my morning coffee, right? It's actual fasting. So you felt the pangs of hunger. You didn't eat eggs and all those sort of things. So when it came to Easter, you were super excited, and you gave those eggs as gifts because you just want to eat them again. And you all get excited about the resurrection of Jesus. So the practice of dyeing eggs continued, with additional colours like green and yellow being used. So this is how it's developed over time. Next one. Traditional practices. Many cultures have used Easter eggs, have unique Easter traditions, such as the Pysanki, Ukrainian Easter eggs, decorated using wax, a wax resist method. I don't know how to pronounce this other one. They're a really interesting group from Lithuania. So their Easter eggs are decorated with hot wax and dyeing, as in you're dyeing something. Red eggs. In Greece and other Orthodox Christian tradition, eggs are still used to this day, dyed red, to represent the blood of Christ. So, do we get a bit of an understanding of how Easter eggs developed now? Kind of get that? Excellent. All right, next one. Modern traditions today, I think we all know about this. Easter eggs are enjoyed in many forms, including chocolate eggs, plastic eggs filled with candy, and decorated eggs made from various materials. Some people love them, some people loathe them. Wonderful. So that's kind of the very quick history of Easter eggs. Lovely. There was no real kind of developed practice amongst very early pagan religions on using Easter eggs in any way that's similar to how we use them now. So yeah, they were a symbol of fertility. It's an egg. It's the most obvious, visible kind of process of fertility that we have. But there was nothing kind of the same way that we've used them to represent Easter in the decorating and giving in such an obvious way. All right, next one. Why do we eat fish on Good Friday? Just a quick poll. There's very few of us here now, so the poll doesn't mean anything, but which one of us actually still eat fish on Good Friday? Is there anyone? Yeah, one. Well, you've stripped the meaning entirely out of the symbol there, Brian. Well done. You don't eat fish at all? Lovely. We don't like that omega-3 and 6. It's evil. Good. Yeah, so, I mean, traditionally, fish was eaten on Good Friday. And before that, fish was eaten basically on Fridays in general. Now, let's find out why that is. Now, maybe that's a tradition that will completely fade out in the next generation, because not many do now. So in early Christianity, fasting on Fridays became a way to honor Jesus' sacrifice. So actual fasting on Fridays, not eating, feeling that hunger. Meat was considered a luxury food. Now for a while, certainly post-war in the Western world, after we got out of the Depression and the boom happened post-war, meat became far more popular. Nowadays, the economy has slowed down massively, inflation is huge, and meat will become and is becoming far more of a luxury again. So we might feel this a bit more. But so meat was considered a luxury food associated with warm-blooded animals. Interesting. While fish, being cold-blooded, were deemed acceptable. Isn't that interesting? So gosh, we're so logical as humans. So meat was considered a luxury food. Fish is meat. It's the flesh of an animal. It's just the flesh of an animal that lives in the water, but let's forget that. But because it's cold-blooded, it's now acceptable to eat while you're fasting. Pretty cool stuff. Whether we think it's logical or not, I don't care. I think it's funny and interesting. So that's how the early Christians kind of justified eating fish on Fridays when you should be fasting. Oh no, it's fine. They don't have warm blood. We can eat it anyway. All right, next slide. Medieval Europe, fish became a staple in the Christian diet on fasting days, including Fridays and Lent. We saw why that happened, the development of, well, they're cold-blooded, we can eat them, it's fine. The tradition grew as the Christian calendar included numerous meatless days. How can we get around it? That's how we think as Christians, right? I don't know. I think most of you here have heard me tell the story. In Israel to this day, technically it's illegal to breed pigs because in the Torah, in the Hebrew scriptures, it says very clearly, thou shalt not breed split hooves, pigs, on the land of Israel. It's fine. How do they have a pork industry in Israel? Well, they actually do. It's not big, but they have one because they breed the pigs on a plinth which is 4 feet off the ground. Right? That's how we get around things. We follow the law to the T, to the black and white, so that we can actually break it and completely dishonor the heart and soul of the law in the first place. So here we go. Tradition grew in the Christian calendar as numerous meatless days. So you're meant to fast on these days, and when you feel those hunger pangs, be reminded of the suffering of Christ and grow in your faith with him. Right? That's the whole purpose of that. But as humans, we try and look around, okay, how can we alleviate the hunger? Well, fish aren't really hot-blooded, so we can eat them, right? All right, so we move on from the medieval period. Fish as a symbol has a special place in Christianity, symbolizing spiritual nourishment and Christ's message. Jesus fed his apostles with fish after his resurrection and called them to be fishers of men. Right? So there is a bit more of that depth. It is intimately tied to Jesus' ministry. Lake fish are, at least, that sort of freshwater fish. Hospitality that comes with that. I hope I put into this the next slide. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, cool, excellent. This is the real reason. This is the interesting reason. Economic impact. We are people, remember. The tradition significantly influenced the global fishing industry growth. In England, King Henry VIII's break with the Catholic Church led to a decline in fish consumption, affecting the fishing industry. His son later reinstated meatless days to support fishermen. This was an economic choice in the Protestant period, because he knew that if he reinstated the Popish or Catholic fasting days, then people would eat more fish. And if they eat more fish, they need to buy more fish. And one of our industries are struggling, the fisheries. So that's how that grew again in the medieval period. Isn't that incredible? Really interesting stuff. As a side plot, bonus point, Mary Magdalene, Mary of Magdala, was most probably quite a wealthy fish merchant. She probably led the industry in Magdala, or was one of the main players in Magdala, and could fund Jesus through that. If you want to know why people think that, look up some of the scholarly works on Mary of Magdalene. Lovely. All right, next one. I don't know why I put that grumpy guy there. There was a reason initially. It's a cross joke. Yep, that's a very cross man. I don't know why I've been ill in the meantime. But there was a really funny joke under that guy, and I've completely forgotten why that is. All right, next one. Oh, yes. Yes, that's right, because we're coming to the end of my talking and the start of our discussion. So we're talking about crosses, right? That guy was very cross. All right. Funny. Haha. All right, so we can go to the next slide. The cross symbol appeared in ancient cultures, including the Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Phoenician civilizations. So even our symbol of the cross is not unique to us as Christians. That might be quite challenging to us. Where it represented life, fertility, or protection. The Egyptian Ankh, for example, was a cross-like symbol with a loop at the top representing eternal life. Is there anything beyond that? I don't think there is. In ancient Babylon, the cross was used as a symbol of the god Tammuz, and its shape was associated with the mystic Tau, the initial of its name. So the cross is not unique to Christianity. It existed long before Christianity did, and there's some pre-Christian use coming up. Yep. Cross symbols were used in various pre-Christian cultures, including European Bronze Age cultures, where it may have represented consecration or burial rituals. The cross mark was also used in Italy in tally marks, sorry. So things like Roman numerals, X for 10, Chinese rod numerals, the sort of cross-like thing for 10, and for the Phoenician alphabet, the cross symbol represented in the phoneme T and its descendant, the Latin letter T, still remains a cross-like shape. So that this symbol has been used consistently. And we see in places like Bethsaida, a biblical city. I did some archaeology there myself. There is steles there that use the cross back to the Bronze Age. Lovely. And I think we're nearly done to open up discussion. Adoption in Christianity. Despite its pre-Christian origins, the cross became a central symbol of Christianity, representing the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Next slide. Early Christians used the cross symbol, particularly the T shape, actually. Very early Christians used the tower-like shape more than the cross we know now to represent Christ's crucifixion, and it became widely adopted in Christian art and iconography from the 4th century AD. We have earlier depictions of Jesus and a cross, but it became widely used from the 4th century onwards, so the 300s on. All right, next one. The Latin cross with unequal arms and the Greek cross with equal arms are two of the most common forms of the cross in Christianity. Next one. That's Harry Styles, 3-time Grammy Award winner, artist. If you don't know him, please go and check him out. Yeah, he's doing a cross, that's right. All right, last one. I think we're back to the Theocafe. Lovely. All right, so there's a lot of information to pack into a short amount of time. I could have done so much more. We could have talked about hares instead of rabbits. Yes, the Easter Bunny is not a bunny. He's a hare. Where does that come from? Doesn't matter. I'm not going to tell you. I've gone over time. If you're really interested, you can ask. So, the question is, well, there's many questions, but I think a couple of them are, does it matter that our symbols have been adopted from previous cultures and religions? Because they have. Should we get defensive when people tell us this truth and try and pretend that it's not truth and create our own truth? And what do symbols mean to us today? And are they useful? All right. So I'll throw it open to the floor. Again, this is not for me to tell you what I think, it's for you all to discuss.
Did I see a hand raised? Oh, never mind. I tried to be quick, you see. No, not at all. No need to apologise. I'll make it. Yes, good. Do my job and turn it on. If the person who mentioned feeling somehow excluded because you were handing out symbolic eggs or whatever is watching, I'd like them to know I'm not having a go at them here. But I would like to counter that point of them feeling excluded, because what I feel that they might be doing there is excluding other people. Sure. But yeah, there was something else I was going to say, and it's completely slipped my mind, and it was a better point than that. Oh, I know it was. Yeah. I guess this is a question. So, do you think perhaps because the cross, the symbol of the cross, pre-existed Christianity, that perhaps the crucifixion of Christ leading to that cross being, do you think there's some relevance to those two incidents, if that makes sense?
So the simplicity of the cross?
Yeah, like the cross symbolized many spiritual things. Now Jesus, talked about taking up your cross in depending on which Gospels you read. So,
yep.
does the significance of Christ being crucified tie in with the fact that the cross was used symbolically prior to Christianity?
Yeah, I think that it's unique, very, very unique to Christianity, that the cross was used in the way in which it's been used. If we think about gods are usually always communicated because of their power and might and their dominance over creation or over their subjects. The cross of Christ was used in a completely different way. So I think, yeah, it's been used because it's a very common shape in society. And yet, as Christians, it was used in such a unique way. And the whole crucifixion of Jesus as God is something that's quite unique to the Christian religion. And I challenge anyone who's watching, or anyone here, to find another religion where the defeat of that God, the refusal of that God to use God's own power to overcome even God's own death. Find another God in any culture in history where that is the prominent symbol. Anybody want to? Yeah, sweet. So Eli's gone.
In the early part of the Christian church,
Yeah.
the symbol was the fish that they drew
The
to
ichthys.
identify one another. There's part draw one part and someone else draw the other,
Yep.
and then they know each other.
Yep.
How long did that last for? And
Yeah.
it's just a question.
Look, it's a great question. I would have put this into this this presentation, but I didn't want to go too long, and I expected a bunch of people to be discussing a bunch of things. So the ichthys, the fish, yeah, really interesting. It's a good example of a symbol which is completely changed in its meaning from when it was used by early Christians to how it's used now. So quite often now you'll see it on the back of one of those really American pickup truck things that we're seeing more and more in Australia, like Dodge Rams and like Chevy Silverados and stuff. Yeah, need a big truck. So you'll see them quite often on the back of those. No offense to anyone who owns those. I'm just kidding around, just being silly. Yeah, so you see them on the back of there, and they'll have like Jesus written in the middle of them, or they'll have like something in there. But how they first started was, as you've said, was so earthy. It was really, Christians were being persecuted. They were afraid to actually identify each other. So one would draw half of a fish in the soil if they were walking along a path. If there was another Christian there, they would understand what that was, and they would draw the other half of that fish, and then they would be able to actually meet each other and then potentially band together as a community. So it initially was a symbol of, what would you call it? Very much so, being sort of undercover, being secretive. Nowadays it's like, look at me, I'm a Christian, I've got a fish on the back of my car, right? It's completely changed the use of that symbol, which is okay. Symbols always change, language always changes. But yeah, the ichthys, that's called. Ichthys because it's very close to what the sound of fish is for Greek, and also all the letters in ichthys, they line up to Jesus Christ, Son of God. So that's why it's called ichthys, right? But that fish symbol, yeah. Look, if we go by what many biblical scholars and historians seem to be saying, the ones that are reputable, that aren't trying to prove that dinosaurs existed with humans and that evolution is all a joke. So those who are actually educated in the area, they tend to say that the cross as a symbol started to be used frequently, in a big way. Early 3rd century. So the ichthys would have been used from very early on, from probably Acts type times up until then. So it's a couple of 100 years there. However, we do have a very early cave, in the crypts of Rome, drawing, the earliest drawing of Jesus, and I wish I had put this in this presentation, but it's a soldier who is mocking one of his Christian fellows, and he's drawn this cross, and on this cross is the head of is a person who has the head of a donkey, and it says such and such is God, and that's the earliest depiction of Jesus that we have. Is a Roman soldier mocking another Roman soldier who worships Jesus, and he's drawn a picture of Jesus on the cross with a donkey's head. So the cross was used very early, but as a major Christian symbol, not in real prominence until the early 300s. Yeah, absolutely. Over there we have a new question when anybody's... Oh, you got it? Good. Excellent. Well done. We got one. Thanks, Josiah.
Is it on?
Yep.
So is it fair to say then that the cross, the fish,
Yep.
even the Star of David,
Sure.
they all started out as signs of persecution, and now we've taken it back into
Yeah, I
something
mean,
positive?
in some ways. So what you were saying is that the cross, the Star of David, all those sort of things potentially started out as signs of persecution, and we're taking them back. I think there is certainly a sense in which that's true. Absolutely the cross, as we have always used it as Christian people. Yeah. I think there's a danger sometimes in using the cross in certain ways in modern society, certainly since Constantine, which is by no means modern, but when it becomes a symbol of empire, we're actually disrespecting what it is. You know, we should value and honor that it's a symbol of persecution, and that God, even though, Jesus, as the incarnate God on earth, suffered persecution, and did that willingly in order to forgive creation and create love, So I think we should honor the cross for that intended purpose. But whenever we talk about victory, as we should at times, there's nothing wrong with being joyous and saying the cross is a sign of victory. I think that's good too, but we need to be very clear about what we mean by that. Yeah, I agree. So reclaiming it, yes, in a more positive way, because so many of us, certainly in the Western world, are not victims. We're not oppressed. Let's be honest about this. But we have to do that in a way that communicates that victory, not in a way of conquest or in a way of having power over, but in a way of grace, of mercy, and of great joy that we are part of God's family. So, yeah, reclaiming it is fantastic. But let's also honor that it actually is it's a symbol of persecution. It is, It's a symbol of basically it's like wearing the electric chair around your neck. Really, it's state-sanctioned murder. Yeah. Great question. Excellent question. Yeah. Thank you.
So this sort of follows on from my wife's question a little bit.
Yeah.
It came to mind that when you were talking about the cross, that you would understandably know what the crucifix is, which is the cross with Christ on it. I personally wouldn't wear one because Christ is not on the cross anymore, but a lot of people do. Can you sort of explain the origin of the crucifix and why in certain denominations use it or wear it still and others don't?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Yeah, it's a really good question. Now, I think there's a lot... There's a lot of misconception. I'm not saying this is so in your case at all, but I think amongst all of denominations there is sometimes some misconception because each denomination isn't great at actually explaining their symbols. So that creates that, right? So up until the Reformation, it was really common to use crucifixes. So yes, Christ is risen, absolutely, but Christ was also crucified. And so people still use crucifixes and things because they're like, well, if you believe in this God who died for you, you should be willing to gaze upon that sacrifice that he made for you. We know that he's not hanging on that cross anymore. I'm talking from this perspective. This was explained to me by a Catholic priest and by Father Anastasios Bazochis, who's a great Greek Orthodox priest. They know that he's risen, absolutely. But this is the sacrifice that Christ made for us. We should be willing to be able to gaze upon that, as well as the cross that no longer has Christ on it. So we shouldn't just always want the glory, always want the resurrection. We should honour the crucifixion that was always also given to us. So that's why some still use crucifixes, some use crosses. Not one is better than the other. People can challenge me on this. I'm not saying how you should feel about it. However, both are valid, certainly very valid symbols in Christianity. And there are some, like the San Damiano cross, I should take it out of my room, which is actually a symbol of both the crucifixion and the resurrection all tied into one. So our symbols, we just should be able to communicate what they are. And respect them, unless there's something like we're worshipping Baphomet or something, which is not good. I don't advise it at all. Hopefully that explains a little bit of it. Both are great. A tendency is always to have as humans one or the other. We don't always have to do that. We can be both and. But one person might like just wearing crosses or just using crosses as a symbol of prayer or meditation. That's perfectly fine. Somebody else might really like using crucifixes as their symbol of prayer and meditation and stuff, and that's fine as well. I don't think Jesus is upset with those, as long as we are worshipping God. Hopefully that explains a little bit of it. It's similar to statues. People get really concerned at times when maybe somebody is praying at a statue of St. Joseph or something in a really Catholic church or something like that. Like, well, they're bowing down to an idol. Well, no, they're not bowing to what that is. They're actually praying through what that represents. And what it represents is the love and providence of God, not of the stone or the wood or that person. It's an aspect of it. It's like when we say we bow to the cross before we walk up into the sanctuary. We're not bowing to a piece of wood. If it got really cold in here, we could pull that wood off the back of the wall and burn it to keep ourselves warm, to keep us alive. It's just wood. But we just bow to what it represents. And when it is representing that thing, Jesus, then it's worthy of respect in that way. But we're not pretending that it's nothing more than wood, Yes?
But you had a slide up there that had, 25 different crosses on it.
Harry Styles. Okay, yep.
No. You had two pictures of Harry Styles, so my understanding is you like him, but... yeah. So all of those crosses obviously represent different things to different people.
Yes. Yeah.
And another way I've thought about trying to answer Paul's question is that the story of Jesus isn't just the resurrection and it isn't just the cross. Yeah. And in fact, the build-up and the trial and all of the various things that happen along the way are all part of the story. Yeah. And what you're doing is in the crucifix that's got Jesus on the cross, you're remembering that part of the story. And when you come to the empty cross, you're remembering another part of the story. Yep. So to me, again, if I was putting my personal preference, I don't wear any jewellery, so But yeah, I wouldn't personally wear one with the Jesus on the cross because I think he's risen. But that's because I'm emphasising that part of the story, whereas somebody who's wearing a crucifix is emphasising
Then-
the other side.
I guess some would ask then why wear a cross at all, because the cross isn't there anymore, and he's not.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
Well, that's probably where I'm at. I mean, I find that my skin irritates any jewellery anyway and corrodes it away. So I mean, I don't wear it for other reasons. But
Possession, yeah.
yeah,
So
possession. Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm kidding. So this is the San
He always
Damiano.
likes to spin the wheel.
Yeah, great. So this is the San Damiano I was talking about. And so this kind of incorporates all of them. So unless it's, again, symbols, unless they are explained to you, they're hollow, right? And this is where we get a bunch of misunderstandings. So we can see, and I won't explain it all to you now because there is so much symbolism in this. This is a reproduction of the cross that St. Francis saw at the church, that he had a heavenly vision that Jesus came down from that and said, Francis, build my church, rebuild my church, right? So this, but anyway, you got Jesus on the cross, but there's an issue here because his hair has already been anointed after death for his resurrection. And we have the angels on either side that were with him in the stories from the biblical scripture that resurrected him. We have a very clearly anointed body, so that means that this has actually happened after he was crucified. So symbols are symbols. They're not the literal thing. They tell a story. So I guess somebody could say, if somebody didn't like crucifixes, which is fine, they don't have to. It's not a problem. Then the person could come back and say, well, then why even bother about a cross at all? Because we know Jesus isn't crucified because he's already been crucified. But the torture device that was used to kill him, he's been through that as well. So why use that as a symbol? Because, and then we explain it. And that's really important. So nobody's wrong in that scenario. We just need to be very clear about how we explain them.
Wrong to use a cross as a comfort, as a way to pray? Is it wrong to do that? Because we often give that to somebody in hospital, and they're usually rounded, sort of, very tactile thing, and especially if somebody's really ill, and they can feel that it's very tactile, and they can feel that Jesus is with them.
Yeah.
Is that wrong to use the cross that way?
What do you reckon, team? It's not meant to be for me to. Yep, go for it. I'll just hang this back up while you do it.
Sure. We've got loads of these. Yeah, I can't tell you whether it's wrong or right. I don't think it's wrong. I sometimes, if I'm going through difficult times, I will come into this church and I will sit just at that cross and just look at it. Because when we are going through hardship, this is how I view it. This is, not necessarily the view of the church. It may or may not be. But when I am going through times of trial, that reminds me that God knows what it's like to go through times of trial, because God came to earth as Jesus and went through some of the harshest trials that could be possibly imagined. So, from my personal perspective, a cross for comfort? No, I don't think that's wrong. I think that's perfectly sound.
A rosary is the same thing, is it not?
Yeah, depending on who you're talking to, rosaries are really evil, and I pray them every day. So,
But if it helps with prayer and it brings
Yes.
you closer to
Yes.
God, then, what
it's about understanding. What was our? Because I think most of us here are actually part of a church, which is good tonight. Because what were we talking about this morning? It's about the peace of God, right? So there's misunderstandings about these kind of things, and it's not blaming people who misunderstand stuff, or even if they understand it and still don't like it, that's fine. We don't have to be against people, especially if they're Christian people doing their absolute best to worship God. So rosaries are really just a Christian mantra. Mantras have been seen to be useful for thousands of years in many different traditions. They focus us on the Holy Family, which is biblical. Can't claim it's not. They focus us on Jesus, and they are meant to be prayed on behalf of and for someone else, which is what Jesus lived for. Other people, right? And blessing others. And so, yes, they can be a phenomenal prayer aid. And it doesn't mean, again, we get into these camps where the worst thing we can do as Christians is become political, right? Within each other. So we're scared because if we do this prayer, we're too Catholic, or we're scared because if we do this prayer, we're too evangelical or Protestant or whatever. No. As long as we understand it and it is genuinely meaningful and adds depth to our relationship with God, then it's good. We can be both and. We can respect each other. Symbols are super important, and we gain so much more from understanding them and getting on than we do fighting these little battles that, secular politics can do that. You can be Labour or Liberal or Green or whatever you want to be. That's not as important as being a worshipper of God, in my opinion. Wonderful. So what Diana just said is, as far as Easter eggs go, she's always told her kids that they're just a symbol of new life and of new birth and all that sort of stuff. And that's perfect for around Easter. We're talking about Jesus resurrected from the dead, new life and things. You never bought them a chocolate bunny. What about a Bilby or something? You horrible person, Diana. Goodness. Okay. Yeah, so that's good. I mean, we don't want to take fun away from kids. That's the very base level of it. If they're going to have fun, they're going to, connect with each other, great. And let's bring into that teaching about the Christian message. It's the same with Halloween and things. So kids aren't on the corners of the streets playing Ouija. They're not trying to summon demons, right? Apart from very extreme examples where maybe there's some teens doing that. And I highly advise against it. Maybe fun once or twice, and then you just regret it, I promise you, for years. But the vast majority of kids are not doing that at all. In fact, they're getting out with their local community and neighbours in the way that they don't do 99% of the time. So how do we be positive people in amongst that so they don't go anti-Christian? Yes.
I don't know why people have such an issue around Easter eggs. And that sort of thing. I think if we understand our society has changed and continues to change, there are many people who have no religious connection. Yeah. Why should the eggs be exclusively religious in our turn? And I'm not to suggest that there's not an economic reason for promoting all sorts of variations to this. Yep. I mean, I think that's the nature of the world. But that doesn't stop us from Christians to apply a meaning that's meaningful to us, or as a way of expressing part of the story or having conversations, be a conversation starter. I kind of think symbols help it on another level too, is that they're an identification point for us. So I'm identifying as a believer in this Jesus on the cross. That's how I'm applying it, and other people who can see that will say, oh, maybe I'm like that too. Maybe I'll talk to that person, because we're never meant to be doing things in isolation from the community of faith. Yes. So whilst we have personal freedoms to express that in honour of God, it doesn't mean that we should be just doing it away from everyone else. Yep. So I think that they can have a really healthy way, and people who apply all sorts of superstitions to it, I think that's where the issue is, that they're applying something that's not really there for most people. Mm. I want to make another comment, which is kind of not related exactly to the Easter symbols. Yeah, but every Easter you get people coming back and saying the Christians are just trying to reclaim an old pagan tradition at Easter. think that people need to understand that there's certain stories that just do not hold up, and that's one of them. The whole idea of Easter is it's built around Passover, which is an ancient thing and comes through. So it's got nothing to do with reclaiming anything. It was simply a reflection of that's the time of the year. And I can tell you this, you can predict it for 20 years, you can predict it for 50 years in advance. You know when Easter is going to be. It's not hidden. Anyway, that's Brian's opinion, and I think I can back it up.
Yeah, good, Brian. Because if you can't, you shouldn't have said it. Good. Yes, thanks, Brian.
Just in regards to the symbols in general, and that people may be afraid of being involved with them.
Yeah, sure.
When it comes to the ancient Near East, I recently discovered from reading some scholarly material that there was you couldn't just idolize an egg.
Yeah, sure.
There was a specific custom to make a statue an idol.
Yes.
So I think we don't need to worry about using these symbols, because you have to actually want to worship that thing and turn it into something. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a fantastic comment. Yeah, thank you. And different traditions, we use the word pagan way too prescriptively, actually. You know, pagan envelops a whole bunch of different religions, different cultures. And if we're afraid of something, then we should at least try and understand it so we know why we're afraid of it. You know, it's like, I think maybe something in our pop culture which illustrates this the best is the idea of Vikings, right? They're really popular. They're cool. I've got no issue with that. They are cool, right? But Vikings aren't a culture. They're not a people. Viking was basically a job description. So you went on a Viking. You were part of a Norse culture, and you went on a Viking to explore and claim land. So it was kind of like a job description. You were almost like a warrior as a Viking. That's why you get Vikings that have Islamic carvings on their swords, because Vikings weren't a religion. They were just people that did Vikings. That kind of stuff. So it's similar to, like my heritage, I've got a bunch of Vikings in my bloodline. And I have a half-sister that was like, oh yes, you know, I love it. I've got a whole bunch of Viking in my bloodline. Then I did my ancestry DNA. I'm like, I've got 20% more than you. But again, it doesn't matter, because it just means you've got Nordic descent of that area. Your ancestors may have been the ancient equivalent of sitting in front of the computer and eating Cheetos all day, right? Doesn't mean they're Vikings unless they chose to do that, or they were chosen to do that. So when it comes to the pagan religions that you're talking about, I completely agree with you. Yes, certainly in the Near East, there's a whole ritual around making something an idol, right? And again, it goes into intent and meaning. You know, Orthodox churches, you walk in and it's stunning, like Greek Orthodox churches, and they do that on purpose. They want it to be a reflection of what it's like in heaven. So it's painted beautifully. And those icons are not idols, because they are not created with that intent at all. They are created to glorify God and to tell a story of Jesus and the Holy Family. So there are differences. I want to couch all of this in, that doesn't mean that I'm trying to say people that see these things as idle and stuff are, you know, simpletons or silly or wrong. No, I don't mean that either. We're not against them either. It's just they've been raised in a culture and an understanding that has taught them that that's the case. Objectively, it's not the case. But they have good reason to think of it that way. Same reason why there's anti-Catholics, you know, or anti-Semites. Now that's never acceptable, right? It's funny, we seem to accept anti-Catholics more than, you know, the other. Neither of those are acceptable. It just comes out of a lack of understanding. you know. Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
I just feel like with regards to the egg, that scripture applies. 1 Timothy chapter 4
Yep.
actually goes into a little bit. And if the person that was, felt that they were excluded wants to sort of investigate a little bit, they can read 1 Timothy chapter 4.
Sure.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you. Have you got the scripture with you?
I do.
Do you want to read it out for us? That'd be great.
It's actually talking about people that teach false things, but specifically verse 3 says they forbid marriage and demand abstinence from foods that God created to be received with gratitude by those who know and believe the truth. For everything created by God is good, and nothing should be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving, since it is sanctified by the word of God and by prayer. So
Yeah. No, thank you. That's great. That's a really good insight. Thank you. Yeah, 100%. That reminds me of the Acts reading of, when Peter was amazed at the idea of the sheet coming down, everything being made clean. It's really about what is the intent and meaning behind this stuff. And I want to be clear, symbols are important. They really are. And they should be respected and valued. But we should know why that is. And we gain so much more through accepting and understanding each other and understanding each other's symbols than we do of rejecting. And of course, that's with the caveat of if somebody, again, in the extreme is over there worshipping Baphomet, don't respect that symbol, don't worship it, what I mean? Or if somebody's over here and saying that, look, if you drink the blood of this sacred cow in a very literal sense, you'll have eternal. You don't have to respect and do that either. Right? Those are extreme teachings. You can say to that, but look, that's okay. Look, if that's your thing, okay. It's really not mine. That's intent and purpose and understanding is really important around this stuff. But as Christians, I think we could go a lot further in understanding each other. Because we have a lot more in common than we have against each other.
Perhaps now is not a bad time to remind our online viewers that if any of you online have questions or comments, I will try to read them and get you a response.
Good. Good. And we haven't gotten into, I think I did this on purpose too, because I expected people. So the idea of the Eucharist and the elements around the Eucharist, that's a whole other, that's like weeks and weeks of debate on that one. And what they represent and all that sort of jazz as well. So, so I think maybe, I'm not going to prescribe to you how you should feel about any of this, but the way that I understand some of it is, I'm not concerned at all when people say that eggs were used in this way, by this culture, by this specific pagan region and religion. That's great. They found meaning in it. Wonderful. It doesn't negate anything at all about how we deeply understand meaning in it. It's the same with the Yule tree and Christmas trees. Actually, that's a really Christian thing. The sort of dressing up of Christmas trees is very Christian. The Yule log is something different, and that belongs to other cultures previously as well, but it's nothing like the Christmas tree that we know. So we shouldn't be afraid of it. We don't have to defend anything, but we should try and get the right information. So when that meme goes around every year in Easter about the comparison of Jesus with Oester and how we've, adopted all of the symbols of Easter from this ancient pagan goddess Oestere. Just actually read some primary sources, and you'll find how incredibly inaccurate that is, and how disrespectful, to be honest, it is to those early pagan cultures that may have recognized that goddess of Oestere, because they did not see that in any way similar to that modern understanding. So you're not respecting the Christians, you're not respecting the pagans if you try and build these myths around it. So, lovely. All right. Wonderful. Okay, good job, team. That was extremely easy tonight. Theocafe is now closed. Again, if any of these things bring up any major issues, I'm super available. Come and have a chat. But yeah, love your symbols, know them. Make no excuses about how and why you use them, but try to respect and honour the reasons, especially Christians, use their symbols, whether they be extreme Orthodox, extreme Catholic, extreme Evangelical. They have good reason for using the symbols that they choose, and it all leads back, or should lead back, to Christ and the love of God amongst us. All right. Good job. The end.